And Jack is also here to fill in space because when I was born, Tom was 13 years old. And Tom and Rip and Jack, I'm sure everybody knows this, but I'll tell you anyway, were born before World War II. And I was born after World War II. So I was separated by a war from my three brothers. And of course, Dad, the patriarch, was in the South Pacific for much of that period between Jack and me. So I didn't, when he came home, I didn't know he'd left because I wasn't around yet. He came home to a much more grown-up Jack and a much more grown-up Tom, who was a few years away from leaving the house to go to college. And so all I remember is having two old, Rip was out of the house by then, was having two older brothers, one of whom was about to leave the house and go to Mississippi State, and the other of whom had his friends come over and abused me. That would be the one who's on camera now, and smiling about it. But Tom was gone a lot during my growing up years. And the next time I really spent time with Tom was after Carol and I were married, and Tom was in Memphis. And during that same time period, Jack was in Memphis. So we were up. We went to Memphis. I was in law school, and we went up to Memphis from Ole Miss and used to stay with Tom and Betty and Russell and Mark, and always marveled over how much cereal Russell and Mark could eat. Yes, I'm talking about your dad. And so we really got to know them then, and I finished law school, went back to Florida, and then we didn't really see Tom a lot again until he was in Atlanta. And then we met Crissy and Matt. And Tom, as you all know, Tom loved fishing. When he came back from Hawaii to Vicksburg, which was probably about 56, 57, he had been playing golf for months or years in Hawaii. He was a very good golfer, according to Jack. And he started, at some point in there, fishing and absolutely loved to fish. And continued to love the fishing for the rest of his life, almost. Unfortunately, he had to give up golf before he was prepared to. The service this morning at St. Monica's was very nice. It was very respectful and a beautiful service. Unfortunately, we didn't get to do any remembrances of Tom there, but we were glad to be able to do it this afternoon with the whole family. And we will miss Tom. And one of the things that I want to take the opportunity to do here is thank Mark and Kim for their years of care for Tom before he passed. They were really champs, everything from taking him in their home to making sure he had all he needed wherever he was. They were superstars, so thank you, Mark and Kim. So that's all I have to say at the moment, anyway.
Have a script. Okay. Just a second, folks. So yeah, Tom. I'm going to read some of this to get me started here. Tom was 7 years old when I was born in 1940. A little more than a year later, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. Very soon, our dad, Russell Sr., joined his fellow military in the South Pacific, constructing airfields Tom, Rick, and I were the family at 707 National Street. The house is still there, I just checked. They were fond gifts for all of us, including our dear mom, Sue Baker. My first memories of Tom were when he and Brother Rick took me to see the Ringling Brothers, Barnum Bailey, three-ring circus in a gigantic tent at the local fairgrounds.
Just ask me to talk louder.
The three of us walked from National Street about a half mile to the ground. I must have been 6 at the time. Tom was 13 and Rip going on 15. I felt so privileged to be with my big brothers and without my parents. They were my heroes. The circus featuring Clyde Baby, the lion team, a full company of high-flying acrobats, an endless supply of clowns, a full circus band, and many other unique acts. It was nothing short of amazing. I hope I never forget just how thrilling it was. My next memory of Tom was when he was teaching me to play golf in the backyard on National Street.
You ever break any windows?
I must have been just a second, sweetheart. I must have been 7. He was practicing his backswing at the time. I had no idea what a backswing was, but I wanted to learn. So I was close behind him so I could see. He was using a 9-iron, which those of you who play golf know is a kind of a sharp instrument. So then when he did his backswing, the iron found my temple and knocked me out. The next thing I remember, I'm sitting inside at the dining table with a blood-soaked washcloth at my temple, and Mom on the phone to Dr. Jarrett, seeking help to repair my head. Dear Tom, next to me expressing great remorse. 4 stitches later, Tom is offering me a selection of his best toys, and despite the circumstances, I'm a pretty happy camper. Tom knew how to care for his younger. Tom and Rip actually built a number of really beautiful balsa wood airplanes.
It has to be done from her account.
These things came in flat kits with lots of sticks and all the curved parts printed on balsa wood boards. And that one had to cut out with an X-Acto knife. After he had the free assembly, Tom would cover the fuselage and the wings with tissue paper. It would be painted with a substance called dough, and then decals put in place. Tom did a number of these and had them hanging in Rip's room from the ceiling. They were really marvelous. Fast forward past Tom falling from a tree and breaking an arm, and then being bit by a monkey at the local carnival. We're now living in the house that Dad designed on Glenwood Circle. Tom is now driving Mom and Dad's 47 Pontiac 4-door with no radio. What a tank it was. Tom is undeterred, and along with his pals Jack Canizaro, Andy Green, Buck Hughes, and Johnny Durst, the fabulous Fox is well known at a number of local clubs, including, and some of you may remember, the Rendezvous, the Dixieland Cafe, the Sportsman Inn, and the notorious Fin and Feathers at Eagle Lake. They were really good friends, and they kept in touch until they all frankly Tom was the last to die. Andy Green was a very smart red-headed guy with a crew cut who became a civil engineer. Johnny Durst became our family dentist. Buck Hughes was a jeweler. He had his own shop in downtown Pittsburgh. Canizero, who the boys, Mark and Russ may remember, lived in Memphis, he was a civil engineer for the Illinois Central River. It was Jack Canizero, whose girlfriend and later wife, Tony, introduced Tom to Betty Aldrich, Mark and Russell's mom. And as they say, the rest is history. One can't tell Tom's story without mentioning fishing. From early on, probably at the urging of our Uncle Boots Cunningham, Tom took up fishing. His passion for fishing extended from childhood through the 70s, and with his creative building skills, he was a little desperate. He absurd that Crissy and Matt remember the matter. He began with a little John boat, having platforms and swiveling seats off a couple of old bar stools, and added. He then added an outboard to get it quickly to the best fishing spots on the lakes he fished, and he added a trolling motor, and he was ready to compete with the best of them. He loved that boat. Just one more thing I'd like to pass. Like I said, they're doing things, mind you, but he always did his best. He supported me through some very difficult times in my life, and I'll always love him for that. May he and dear brother Rip reconnect in the great beyond and rekindle the camaraderie that they both enjoyed so much in one another. Rest in peace, my dear brothers.
Am I good? Hey everybody.
Hi, Mark.
So, most of my early memories of Dad were when we were out in the lake, the house in the lake, and as it's been mentioned already, he was a big fisherman, and he used to like to invite me to go out there fishing with him. And I can't say that it was a lot of enjoyment, because in the morning it was fine because it was kind of cool, but by the time that you get late in the day, it was hot. All of my drinks were gone, and I was thirsty, and the only thing that was left was his warm beer. But so I would take a taste of the beer, and it was liquid, but it wasn't very refreshing. That's what I remember about my days in the lake with Dad. And then of course, with the unlikely event that we caught something, it was fun that we would go home and sit on the back patio and watch Dad fillet the fish, and we would have it for dinner. And it was actually an amazing feat of filleting fish. He did a pretty good job, but even with the big fish, the size of the fillets, I was thinking there's got to be more meat to the fish than just these small fillets. So I remember that part. That was one of my earliest memories of Dad. And then I mentioned the back patio. I used to sit out back with Dad and cook with him. He had a charcoal grill, and he would cook hamburgers and steaks. And I remember just sitting out back with him. And there's it's interesting how the memory works. It's just a few memories I have. I remember distinctly sitting there, and he just talking to me and saying that he's glad I'm there, and I was his co-cook. I didn't understand what it meant. He says, kind of like a co-pilot, but you're my co-cook. And for some reason, that distinction, I kind of felt important. I was doing something because I was helping him cook the food for the dinner that night. And then there was an episode that I was trying to remember. I think it happened at David's wedding in 1968. And I only have vague memories because of what happened, but I'm pretty sure it happened at David's wedding. We were there to attend the wedding, and either the day before or maybe the day of, we had decided, well, maybe it's a good idea for the boys to go and have a swim in the pool. So Mom and Dad took Russ and I down to the pool. At that point, we couldn't swim. We were 6 years old. We couldn't swim yet. So they put a life jacket on me, and they didn't put it on properly, though. So I was floating out into the deeper water, and you know, all I can remember is my head was slipping through, and I couldn't breathe, and I was looking up and I don't think Mom was there, but Dad was there, and I think he was fully dressed for your wedding, and nobody else was helping. So he jumped in, fully clothed, with all his wedding clothes, and I can distinctly remember him coming over and picking me up, taking me to the side, and then by that point, I'm embarrassed because everybody in the pool was looking at what had happened. I don't know if you ever remember that story.
I don't. Carol, do you remember that story?
Never ever heard that.
I remember.
Okay.
Absolutely remember.
Were you there?
I was.
Okay, all right.
Did you help?
So Russ couldn't swim either, so I can't give him a hard time about not saving him. And then I remember when he and Mom had separated, and he moved into his apartment at Turtle Creek. Russ and I would go every other weekend. And again, the thing I remember is he had a pool right outside of his back door. And we would swim at the pool, although we weren't supposed to, because it was the adult pool, and you had to be 15 years or older. That's what it said posted. But Dad was like, "You're 15, swim as much as you want." And then, so fast forwarding a good bit to when we came to Atlanta, got to see. Fortunately, we were able to see Dad more frequently. And he was able to visit his grandchildren, and he would come over to visit us most of the time in the first house we were in, but most of the time was when we were in the Summerwind house, which was at the house that most of you have been to when we had the big 2007 reunion. But I do distinctly remember one of the times around Christmas time, he came to visit, and he got confused as to which house we lived in. So he pulled into the neighbor's house, to the neighbor's driveway, walked in, walked through the garage, walked into the house as if he lived there, because he thought he kind of did. And our neighbors saw him and like, "Hello." and at that point, he had a full beard and a mustache. It was right around Christmas time. And the neighbor's kids thought maybe that was Santa Claus. And so we didn't know any of this. So Dad comes over, and he says, "Well, I think I just scared the heck out of your neighbors." So anyway, that was another memory. And then, since we've been here for 20 years, you know the term familiarity breeds contempt. And there were self-health setbacks, and we first moved him in with us, and then moved into assisted living, which you know, to him, the word prison would come up a lot. He was in assisted living. Yeah. So it was definitely, you know, up and down, and then and we had to make, you know, some tough decisions along the way. But I will say, after this last incident where we had the fall, there were very few times of lucidity for Dad. There were two moments that by the grace of God, it was the Sunday after his accident, and he hadn't been barely conscious. Kim was there, and if she wasn't there to tell me that it was true, then I wouldn't believe it. But he opened his eyes, and he looked up, and he was looking around, and he didn't know where he was. But he said, "Mark," or his son, "I love you, son, and you're a good boy." And
he didn't say it in that way. He took your hand, and it was childlike. It was like from the depths of his heart. I've never heard anything like it, and we both just wept.
And I don't know if that was for me or for him, that some reconciliation had to happen, but it was something I'll never forget. And then the other point that he was somewhat lucid was the next morning he got transferred to a regular room, and he was somewhat conscious, and he looked at me, and he said, and he knew who I was. He said, "Son, am I dying?" And I didn't know what to say because I wasn't expecting the question. So I just said, "Dad, you're very sick. The doctors are, trying to see what they can do to help you." And then he said something that at first I thought was kind of a little bit funny. He said, "Am I going to die a martyr?" And I thought it was kind of funny. It's like he's trying to pick his place in heaven. Am I going to die a martyr? But the more and more I thought about it, and the more and more I reflect on the time we had today, we in our Catholic faith, we believe that suffering has value. Suffering has redemptive value. And part of me thinks that maybe he realized that there is some value in that suffering, and that maybe even the 6+ years that he was in assisted living and memory care were deposits he was putting down on, maybe a quicker path to heaven. I hope to believe that. And those are the 2 points that God gave me, 2 points of grace that God gave me to experience something before my dad passed. So that's it.
The memory does things. Does things. I will. So David already did this, but this was the first thing that I want to do. Also thank Martin for what you guys have done for our dad, our loved one, the last many years. When most of us feel like we were robbed of our father, dementia. And so I got to thank you from the bottom of my heart. So, moving on to Dad. So when I think of my dad, it's just with a smile on my face. First word that comes to my mind is love. And my dad loved life. He loved people. He loved family. When my first son, Dan, was born, he was living in Florida at the time, and he made a trip over to the hospital, and he said, "You will never love anything like that. You will never," and he was talking about family, your children. I'll never forget that. And there's, like Mark had said, there's so many things that he said that I remember, and it's those are the ones that I remember. So for me, he provided unconditional love as his son, and I got a few stories that will help you get a picture of that. So I had a great childhood, primarily due to really loving parents. My dad was my hero. I heard that said before about my dad. He was my hero in adolescence and as a young adult. One of the big reasons why is because he loved me and encouraged me during very dark times in my life. My teenage years were not good. I had a hard time transitioning to adulthood. I like to think that I did make it, but at the same time, I really struggle with that. Yeah, there are people that can call me on that. I really struggled with adulthood and wasn't an easy person to understand or accept. It would have been really hard. My dad, and one of my outlets was television, and particularly Star Trek. The original Star Trek series, it changed my life. I became an engineer because of that, but I was hard to live with. My priorities were completely astray. They were, completely out of whack during that time. I mean, I kind of worshipped the altar of Star Trek. It consumed my time, my thoughts, my priorities. But through all of that, my dad accommodated those misplaced priorities. Only looking back do I realize it. But he really did. He loved me through it all. And I can remember these were the types of words that I would get from him. Son, we'll work it out. In other words, the Star Trek, the new Star Trek thing is coming out. I've got to go to that. We'll make it work. I heard those comments so many times. So thank God he loved me through it. At the same time, ironically, and this has already been alluded to, every time we talk about my dad, I kind of felt like maybe his priorities were a little bit out of whack. Fishing. Okay, so I didn't understand it then. I don't understand it now. The obsession with fishing. These days we call them passions. You know. So all right. So I was passionate about Star Trek. He was passionate about fishing. But you know that passion, those obsessions, probably made it easier for him to accept me with my weird priorities. So, like I said, I've had a little bit of time to kind of think through some of these things recently. That's why he was probably able to accept my quirks. We all are imperfect, and we all recognize. The thing is to recognize that there are imperfections in all of this, and so sometimes you accept those. So, this is my favorite story to tell about my dad. I'm pretty sure Mark knows this. I know you'll know the setting. It's when I turned 14, I was able to get a job at Giant Foods, big supermarket in Memphis. Mark, you started there about the same time when you were probably 14. So I just graduated high school. I was going to quit my job. I'd been working there, so probably about 3 or 4 years at Giant. Worked really hard. So I was going to go spend the summer in Atlanta. My dad had moved there previously, probably prior to that year before, but he was back in town for my graduation. And he said, well, you're going to be looking for a job when you get to Atlanta. I said, yeah, absolutely. Well, you need to get a letter of recommendation from your boss. You know who that was?
I can see him.
Okay. Mr. Starts with a B. Mr. Bradford.
Bradford, yeah.
Mr. Bradford.
I remember Bradford.
Yeah, all right. So I remember him very
Real nice guy. I remember
yeah. All right, so, yeah, all right. He was very stern. He was very strict. So, Dad's in the car while I go in to get the letter of recommendation, or to request a letter of recommendation from Mr. Bradford. And then I come back to the car and said, yeah, well, Mr. Bradford, you know, said, no, we don't do that. So, Dad, you see that look in my dad's face. Many of you have seen that determined look. He goes, with a few choice words, he says, I'm going to go have a talk with Mr. Bradford. And he knew. I mean, he knew. He'd seen us work. He'd seen how hard we worked. So he came back, and needless to say, I got that letter of recommendation in a couple of weeks in the mail, and it was one of the best recommendations I ever had. So, do you remember that story at all?
I do not remember that story. I'm sure I've heard it, but I don't remember it specifically.
It's like I say,
I heard it.
Yeah. I know you did. You know, so. I could go on. I could tell a whole lot more stories, a lot like that, but you know, I'm just thinking so much about how much I love my dad and he loved me, especially during those crucial years. And I'm going to miss him. I'm just grateful to have had him as a dad. I really am.
Hi fam. Hi. So everybody that's in this room has already heard this story, so they're going to have to hear it again, but it's sort of short. It's sort of, instead of a specific memory, it's a cluster of memories. So every other weekend or so, Dad would take me and then Matt, when Matt came along, this is going to be his memory as well, take us to Stone Mountain. We'd get a season pass, and he would take us to Stone Mountain, and he would pack his little igloo cooler. Everybody knows what it looks like, right? It was ancient and had an orange top. Everyone knows what this igloo looked like. So we would pack it full of sodas and Dad's beer, and we'd have tuna and deviled ham, which is gross, and Vienna sausages. And we would climb up the mountain, and saltines, and we would climb up the mountain, go halfway, because I was little and I didn't want to walk that far. And we would stop in a little atrium, like picnic tables, and we would eat. And on the way home, he would buy us like little snacks from the store, but it's the same thing every time. And I think what I wanted to share with you guys is just that it was kind of what Mark was saying. He knew how to make people feel important. He always knew how to make people feel like they were special and loved. And I think that that's a really unique thing for anyone. But I'm really grateful that he was my dad, and I'm going to miss him a lot. So thank you for letting me share.
What's to say that everyone hasn't said already? I love my father. He used to take us out to Stone Mountain, and later in my life, maybe, though, not as early as Crissy. But even when I got back from the Marines in 2014, we were still going up the trails when I could see him. He used to take us to, what was the lake around here that he loved to go to? Yeah, Oconee.
Oconee is out. If he was in his apartment, it was out that way.
Yeah. But one of the lakes they drained eventually, and he would take us by, and he'd say, oh yeah, I used to fish out here before it was all dry land. And I think Uncle Jack and I have a similar memory of making model planes with Dad. Even when I was very young, still here in Georgia, we would do the paper planes with the thinner, the paint thinner, and the wooden bodies. And I think I appreciate my father's lessons that he always gave me. Just enjoying the outdoors, working with your hands, practical lessons that he would pass on in little ways. I'll miss my father, and I worry that I might not have learned everything I needed to from him, but the things I do, I'll cherish forever. And thank you, family. Love y'all.
I miss you. So, Dad was my father-in-law, and what am I looking at? So anyway, I remember when I met Russ telling me how his dad was like the main reason that he made it through electrical engineering because he was such an encourager. And then I also remember when Russ and I got married that Dad turned to me and said, from today on you call me Dad. And that meant a lot to me because my dad died when he was 53, a week after my 19th birthday, so I didn't have that anymore.
Hi, I'm going to go as the another daughter-in-law. Hi. There's a lot of different areas, because he wasn't my dad, but he was, he was just, he was very kind. My dad was a very hard man, and so Dad, it's hard for me, I'll call him Granddad and not even hear it sometimes. But he always had a turn of phrase, a fun, his favorite thing every holiday would be, everybody should have gravy on their food. And some of my kids didn't like gravy. He would always say, gravy is groovy, and his bacon had to be extra crispy. If it wasn't crispy, it wasn't real bacon. And I remember him, even in assisted living, giving all of the cooks, he would tell how he was training the cooks to get the bacon right because they didn't really know how to cook bacon. And he would share with me, he'd say, yeah, I've got this one trained. This one's not really paying attention. And so I'm like, okay. I sometimes wanted to just pray.
What about the sugar rush? Did he make them do the sugar pastries?
No, he didn't make them do that I won't know about, but he did have a sugar rush because he had spring gallon bags every single week, and I'm not kidding, gallon of lifesavers,
Wintergreen lifesavers.
the wintergreen lifesavers, and he would call and say, here are my groceries, I need this, this, and this, and another big bag. And I'm like, where are these things going? You know, but he just, you know, anyway. But I just remember he always had a phrase. He always had, you know, some sort of a turn of phrase. And, you know, he and I spent a lot of time together, you know, with the whole medical journey, you know, that we got to spend. And so I got to know Tom really up close and personal, probably a lot more than most of y'all. And we set out on many journeys of doctor's offices and hospital stays and, you know, just so many things. And Tom is a ladies' man. Tom is a ladies' man. So he very much so was very proud that he could remember names. And so that was really important to him to remember your name. So he would, you know, the nurses, anybody, names of people and names of roads. You know, he always, you know, would tell you this road and this road. I remember when I used to drive on this road, and he would look you in the eye. And of course, I'm horrific with names. So, I mean, you know, if I get you wrong, you're that for life. And so Tom, but it was so important to him, family. And that's something that really struck home with not just Tom, but all of you. You are all like something that I've never experienced, all of you. But so, you know, Tom had to have his phone all the time because he was talking. He was talking to one of you at all times. One of you at all times. Because that's all he had to call, except for maybe a couple other few friends, but you were his life. You guys all were his life. And so this is his little phone book that is like, you know, tattered, and I can't even really read it anymore. So then, you know, then he had us print these phone lists that he carried with him around, and he had everybody on speed dial. He was calling and calling, and so when he moved into our basement after the brain surgery, he would sit and have long conversations with Rip. He and Rip got really, you know, I guess, got a really deep relationship again. I don't know if they had not, but anyway. But I was teaching classes, sewing classes in the basement, and Tom was down there. And, you know, Tom could talk loud, and in his hearing, he would turn the volume up. And so they would sit there and watch entire baseball games, hours watching golf. They would sit there and read the paper together. And like you wouldn't hear anything, and then I would kind of peek in, and then you might hear a page turn. And they're just sitting there on the phone together, you know, like not even face to face, just reading the paper together. And this went on for the entire time that he was living with us, and it was amazing. And then just I go to this, the beauty of your family, something that all of the reunions, all of the times that everybody would come together, y'all would all come afar. Sitting here right now, even Skyping in because you couldn't come to the funeral, but you still want to participate in sharing these memories with each other. This is just, it's family. It's nothing but family and love, and you guys, you know, invited me into this very early. I was very, very blessed to be able to, you know, contribute in a little way. We just didn't have that on my side of the family, you know. And so I'm so grateful that my children got to continue with the Bakers and the Schultzes and the Cunninghams, and I know I'm forgetting people. Yeah, Schultz, and just all of the family that comes together, and they got to grow up with that, and it's just such a gift. I mean, they have these cousins, and you know, even down towards the end here, you know, with Dan and Joel coming in, how important it was for them to be there to say goodbye to Tom. And we just had the best time because, you know, the brothers had come in, and that was beautiful. And Russ had come in earlier, but this time with Dan and Joel, you know, selfishly, we were all kind of joking. This was like the most. They'd come without their parents, so we got to see Dan and Joel as like adults, and we got to have quality and quantity of time with Dad, and with you know, playing with the grandbabies or their nephews or cousins, or I don't know, but in my mind. So anyway, and it was just such a gift of family during this time period, and I'm just so thankful that, you know, that Joel and Dan were able to come. And then just finally, you know, it was hard, but it was a gift to be able to spend so much time with Tom with his medical. Because like we talked about, we do learn a lot through suffering. And Tom went through a lot. But, you know, he, as much as he struggled, you know, he didn't, I mean, I sat there and held his hand through a lot of things, and he never, like, said a cuss word. He never, like, I mean, he was, which I was shocked, because there were some things I was, like, ready to cuss for him. And because I'm like, oh, not the stars. But he was so strong. He was so strong, which he was to the very, very end. And, you know, I was just very thankful and honored to be able to serve Tom, to serve my husband, and to serve your family in that way, to be able to use, you know, my medical background, as limited as it was, but to be able to do that for him and for y'all. But it's a bigger gift for me, because I hope and pray that it made me a better person, and I just thank you guys for bringing me to your hearts, and I'm gonna miss Tom a lot. So, thank you.
Bootsy was in Jackson, and he would call me and tell me, David, I can't get hold of Bootsy. What's wrong? And I'd say, nothing, Jack, or nothing, Tom. You need to try again. They were together on the phone for a couple of hours a week, and they grew to be very close. And we lost Bootsy first, but I know Tom really missed Bootsy. He really missed Bootsy, and he really missed Rip after they passed away. And he would talk about them often when I talked to him. He really cared deeply for people, and we were lucky to be a couple of them.
Hello. I wanted to kind of go into a little bit more detail on something that Russ brought up a little bit ago. He said that Russ had a very specific drive, or a very specific passion that was different from what Tom knew and understood. And I'd like to think that adding a couple more years in that rift makes that a little bit harder, because I also have, you know, all of us grandkids have very specific interests, and I don't think there was a single time where he understood a single one of those. And that was okay. You know, he had his things, and there was an equal amount of trying to understand, of which there was none. Regardless, though, I think something that really did stick with me is that it didn't matter. That was never a part of the conversation that we had. Whenever Tom would talk to me or to any of my siblings, all he wanted us to know was that he was proud of us, he loved us, and he genuinely knew that we were going to be okay, that he cared about where we were. And I guess it goes without saying that the one and only time in my life that I genuinely remember being on a lake fishing had him involved in it. And it also goes without saying that was not a positive trip. It was sufficiently long ago. I don't remember. I have to assume there was warm beer involved. But again, at this point, just he for my entire life he was nearby. He was local to Atlanta, and I just know that he loves all of you and all of us so much, to the point where there's not been a single holiday, there's not been a single important event in our lives that he wasn't a part of. Every wedding, every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, everything. And I know that he really cared about each and every one of y'all a lot. I heard that from him more than anything, was how much he missed you guys, and he just really enjoyed the moments that he got to share with all of us. So I'm glad that we got to share that with them.
I'll share something short to build off of what Josh was saying. Granddad always wanted the best for us. And so every year at Christmas, if he didn't just give cash because he couldn't figure out what was best, we would get some kind of as seen on TV product that he thought was the best gift that we had to have. And I remember he would get us Omaha steaks every year because in his opinion, they were the greatest steaks in the world. We never told him that they were not. But he loved them so much, and so anything that he deemed to be the best, he had to make sure that we had it. And he was very good at making all of us feel special. I remember, again, he went through an insane amount of lifesavers. And so what did we get him for Christmas as grandkids who we have no idea what we're doing? We're little, 6, 7, 8. We got him more lifesavers. And he acted like it was the first time he'd ever gotten lifesavers. He opened it. It was like the best gift he's ever received. He told us every time we saw him about how great those lifesavers were. Thank goodness we got him some. He didn't know what he would do without them. I got him a hat one year with his favorite sports team on it, and he wore it every single time he knew I would see him, so that he knew that I knew he loved his gift. And he wore it for so long. I think he still would wear it. And it had been like 15 years later. And when he started to just decline with his dementia, he was still the funny his jokes didn't change, but his memory did. And so I had a boyfriend at one time, and we broke up, and then I started dating my now husband, Nicholas, and he thought I was dating 2 men at once. And he kind of pulled me aside, and he lovingly said, "Jessica, you really can't be doing this." And I was like, "Granddad, I don't know what you're talking about." And he goes, "What about Jimmy? What are we gonna do? What is he gonna say?" And I'm like, I thought you knew he was long gone. But it was really special to have him at our wedding. It was just special to have him involved. Like Josh said, he was at every holiday, every birthday he could make it to, even towards the end when it was really hard and his teeth weren't working out great, he could hardly eat. He still came, he still had his full plate, he still had all of his gravy. He still tried to eat bacon, even though he couldn't really eat bacon. He tried his best. And he was a really fun granddad. We loved going to his apartment. It always smelled very strongly of smoke. And he always had that 70s show on in the background. But we loved every time we had with him. I was only a little afraid when he would drive us. But we still had lots of fun. He loved taking us to Burger King. That was like his hot spot that he would take all the grandkids out to impress us. And of course, we were little kids, so we thought this was like, the Taj Mahal of going out to eat. So he always made every time that we had with him very special. And he never left without giving us one of those very fuzzy, prickly kisses goodbye on our cheek with his big old fuzzy, sharp beard. So it was very special to be able to celebrate him today and with all of you guys.
So for me, Granddad, for majority of my memory, he lived with us, and when, one question he would always ask me every time he would see me, be like, "So, when are you getting married? Where are the boyfriends at? What's going on there?" And I'd always be like, "Granddad, I don't know, I'm just chilling." He's like, "It's okay, they're not ready for you yet." And I'd be like, okay. But there was one time I distinctly remember coming back from college, I think after like my freshman year, and he was over for a holiday, and he came up to me and he goes, "Oh my goodness, I'm so happy to see you. Like, I saw the kids and Nick, like, that's so awesome. Like, you look great, like, for, like, after your first kid." And I was like, oh gosh, he thinks I'm Jessica. And so I just kind of like was like, I don't know what to do here. So I was like, thank you. Like, you know, I was like, they're amazing. Like, they're such a blessing in my life. And then, like, I think it was like 30 minutes later, he came up to me and he was like, "Yeah, you're Alyssa, aren't you?" Yeah. But one thing I always remember is kind of like y'all had said, he would give us random gifts. And the gift that I got, which was like the biggest gift of all, was my first car was his big red Xterra. And one thing I feel like Granddad and I had in common was car problems, because that car is a piece of work and it had a lot of problems. And I remember when he had his keys taken from him, like that was really hard for him. So anytime he'd come over, we'd hide the car because we were like, we don't want to like stir up any emotions. And so he'd always come up to me and be like, "So how's my car driving?" And I'd be like, "It's going good, it's going good." But he was always quick with a joke, always so joyful, always asking us like, "How's school going? How's work going?" And he would always just be like, "Hey, like you're doing great. Like you're gonna do great no matter what. Like you're just so smart." And like for me, in high school, I struggled a lot with school, and one thing he'd always be like, "Oh, you're just so smart. Like you're just gonna do so well in life." And that was something that was just like, it was super sweet to hear, because that's something I didn't really think about myself, was that I was just like, school was harder for me. And every time I'd be like, "Oh, you know, school's just really hard," and he'd be like, "Hey, like that's not everything. And like you're just so smart, you just like haven't figured out in what yet." But he was always so loving, and he was always so joyful, and I thankfully got to be here and visit him, because I've been at school, so I haven't gotten to see him a lot recently. I got to be here and visit him the day before he passed, or the day he passed, and I sat down and I was like, "Granddad, like, I finally got a boyfriend! Like, isn't that crazy?" And just like, I don't know if he could hear me or not, but in my mind he could, so I just told him all about it, because I remember that's one thing he was always so excited about. And he would always joke around me about, and he was a great granddad. He made us all just feel like very special, very loved, and he had his own special way of just like of showing his love. And yeah, so thank you guys for coming. I don't think y'all realize like how special this is, just being able to all talk with each other and just talk about like all of the fun memories. Because yeah, there were hard times, but he had such a big heart and he loved all of y'all so much. There wasn't a day gone by where he wasn't like talking about his brothers, being like, "Oh, I can't believe they just won't come and visit me already. Like, I don't get it." And just being like, "I just miss them." And we're like, "Yeah, like y'all were so special to him." And that was like one thing he never went a day without mentioning how much he loved everyone in his family. So, yeah.
So, speaking of that car he had, after Alyssa was done using it, it eventually was given to me after I got my license. And I don't remember where he was living exactly, but at one point he was living in like this like apartment or this like townhome thing. And then he moved in with us. But both places, like his room in our house as well as where he lived before, he had this very like distinct smell that kind of lingered. I don't really know how to describe it, but it was very much just what he smelled like. And after we got in the car, I felt like his smell kind of lingered. Where we'd go anywhere and I would still kind of smell the same smell that Granddad smelled like. And, you know, no matter where I'd go, I would always think of him just because, I don't know.
You can smell him.
And that car may or may not be around anymore. someone may or may not have gotten a little tired while driving, and it might be gone. So, but I'll always remember just kind of, because I also kind of hated that car. The ceiling was falling, gas was expensive, brakes didn't work at the time, but it was always just a relic of him that I really remember just with my experience. Because as far as I can remember, that was the only car he drove as far as, like, as long as I've known him. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to think about not seeing him for a while. But I'll always love him.
So I was always very close to Granddad. I was a daddy's girl, so I would do everything with my father, and that included going to see. That included to go and see Granddad. I had lots of memories of him at our house. Every day when we were homeschooled or online schooled, whatever we were doing, I'd get out at like 2 o'clock and he'd start walking around the trails behind our house on the rocks. I would join him every day picking up rocks, having a little collection. We would talk about, I don't remember, probably like school, books, really anything. And as we would go up every day, like around the same time. We'd go back down to his patio we built him by our basement, and I would run inside and grab a Nature Valley granola bar. I don't know why. I ate those every single day at the exact same time. And he would attempt to call at least someone in the family. If it was Uncle David, Uncle Jack, Matt, Crissy, anyone he could get a hold of, he would call and we would have a conversation. I wouldn't really know what to talk about because I was like 8, 10, maybe, I don't even know. But I just knew that he would take time to sit with me, talk to me about whatever kids, like little kids wanted, like toys or whatever, anything I was playing with. And he would want to make sure that I knew the people in my family and in my life, have relationships with them, and be able to grow a part of this amazing family that is very close to each other, always come and gather to see each other. When he, I remember me and Andrew would, every time we'd go down to see him in the basement, we would try, he had these little, cookie cracker things. I don't remember what brand it was. Yes, Milano's, whatever. And we would try so hard to get him at the right time when he was eating them, because he would offer them to us. So we would try to go down and find him to see if he would offer us a cookie. We'd even hint at it, but he would not get the hints. We would never ask him, because we were like, no, it's his, we don't want to ask him, he bought that, like, we can't do that. I actually got a bag not long ago, it's just like, remember having memories with that. But, I would, when he went to his retirement home, I, would go again every day with my dad. We'd pick him up from Mass, go to Mass, take him grocery shopping, go back to his, retirement home. And yes, part of it was just me wanting to spend time with my father, but that little urge of just wanting to do everything with my dad made me become very close to my grandfather. And I was very lucky to have all that time with him. Whether it was sitting down playing bingo or sitting down while he was trying to talk to the cooks about his bacon and trying to figure all that out. It was many, many great times. Whether it was taking him to this one specific park so he could shave his beard into a trash can that he's had for years. All those little memories I just remember very well. And like Alyssa said, he would always ask, like, where's the boys? Where do you, I know you have to have someone in your life, and I think he would, yeah, I was like 8, but then when he was like going to like dementia, he kept on like more or sooner he would confuse me with one of his other sisters and think that I had like a husband or something at times. But he'd always be like, you're such a beautiful girl, where's the boy? I know there's some boys after you or something like that. I'm like, no, Grandad, no, not dating right now. No one right now. And I'm happy that with the day before he passed, when we were visiting him at the hospice facility, I was able to introduce his boyfriend, Ethan, and he can finally somewhat meet him, because that was something he really kind of, in a sense, encouraged me about. It was like you'll find someone, and that was very special, very hard, but very special to be able to see him. But all those memories, I feel like, will just live on, and I don't fully know how to feel now, but I'm just happy that I was able to have such a close relationship and be close to him, physically and just emotionally, I suppose. It was just very lucky for me to be able to do that.
Emily, you remember how he used to lose his phone and his dentures every day? And he would go up to Emily and he'd be like, so you're practically the master finder, so I need you to go look for my dentures, go look for my phone. Like every day, like clockwork, he'd just come up and be like, so
he would lose something.
You're so good at finding things. I lost my phone again.
Yeah, that was definitely a time with all those. But I am just quite happy to have all those memories with him and with all of you guys as well.
You go ahead.
I'll go ahead while the grandsons are going. Granddad was amazing. He was larger than life. You all know that. I don't need to drag that any further, but my first memories with him were not of fishing, but I did fish with him, of course. They were building little paper airplanes that he loved to bring out. He'd always bring them out to us when we lived in Pennsylvania. And I remember every time he came out, it was such a joyous and fun time because he'd bring those over, we'd be out in the sun, flying around, and, you know, I never really remember having any bad times with Granddad. He was always so happy and joyous. We'd go out to Gettysburg, or I remember out for Halloween, and those were just really fun memories of him when I grew up. Another one was similar along the lines of what some of the cousins have said about being the matchmaker, because when he discovered it was either MySpace or Facebook, anytime there's a picture of me with any girl, coworker, friend, whatever, he's like, in all caps, she's a keeper, grandson, like, right in all caps, and like on everything that we posted, and it was just awesome because he was just always happy for me and, you know, all the grandsons, and always just being like joyous, even though it might have seemed like he was yelling because he was typing in all caps. If there's some background noise, my dog is drinking water really loudly, so I apologize. But as you heard, probably my brother and I got to go out a couple weeks, and you got to see him a couple days before he passed, and that was really powerful and obviously emotional, very hard, but it gave me a real sense of hope and a feeling with a big acceptance with his passing, with death in general, because there's two things. One, the lady who was talking about his state and how he was doing and everything was very warm and thorough in how she explained it and the transition and whatnot. But the second thing was really how he hadn't opened his eyes in a while, but there was a day that we had like 10 family members there with Uncle Martin and Kim, most all the cousins, and then his now grandkids, and he opened his eyes for a bit, and though he couldn't talk or he was just moving a bit, I could feel his presence, and I could feel that he could feel we were around, and he's just so tough that I feel like he was in a lot of pain in his final days, but he very much went into a better place, and I just know that he had a very happy, fulfilled life, and I could feel that from him, and I'll obviously miss him, but I know he's in a better place now.
Thanks, Joel.
I might want to pipe up here. This is Cousin Bill with Ann. We're in Memphis. Snowed in, believe it or not. But it's so great seeing all of your faces and hearing all your voices. And most of all, hearing all about your memories of Cousin Tommy. My memories, you know, we grew up in different states forever. But my mother and Sue Baker were sisters. And as you all know, the Herbert girls were really tight. And it was through their bonds that they kept all of their children, all of my cousins, very much a part of the family, which would have been hard in those days, growing up in the 40s and 50s, before cell phones or social media. So most of our times together, believe it or not, were face to face. And you know, so there were many trips that we took with my dad and mom and all my siblings from, at the time, Charleston, where we grew, where our formative years were. But the trips were always to Vicksburg. And so my first memories of Tommy were seeing him really as a, he had to be, I don't know for sure, but he had to be a teenager, or maybe even a pre-teenager. But there's this picture, and many of you probably know it. It was a reunion, and it was out on the hill, on the Cunningham Hill. And it was when Grandma and Grandpa Herbert were still alive. And there were all of us cousins there, running around barefoot, shorts and no shirt on. And it was hot as heck. But that, I think, is one of the first memories I have of Tommy, and maybe even David and Jack as well. David had to have been, I don't know, like 5. I might have been 6 or 7. I don't know. It was very early, but I do remember those times with the cousins, mostly out on the hill, because that's where all the kids seemed to like to be, playing out there with the cows and in the woods. But you know, the other reason I think I've always felt so connected with the Baker boys and the other cousins is, as I said, was because of our moms. And my mother always spoke with such dearness about Tommy. I don't know, there was a special place in her heart for him, and for David and Jack and Rick as well. But I think she really often spoke about Tommy. So most of my memories as a child from Tommy were really through my mother's discussion about him as one of her nephews. And of course, as I aged and still not really seeing Tommy very often, but whenever I did, he always knew my name, which I knew his name because he was, you know, my big cousin. But he never forgot. You know, he always knew it, and he always greeted me as if we had never been apart. And I think a lot of you all have mentioned this in your memories of him, is that he always made you feel important, and just by the fact that he knew you and he spoke to you like he was your best friend or your favorite cousin. So I'll always remember Tommy. And I remember just one other time, the first time Ann met Tommy, I guess it had to be in the early 70s. So Tommy must have been in his 40s, I guess. But I remember Ann turned to me and said, "Who is that?" And I said, "Well, that's my cousin Tommy, and she said, "Boy, what a hunk! What a hottie!" So we were hoping so much to be there with all of you, and it was a real pleasure to see many of you at the last reunion at Mark and Kim's, where Tom was, and those were our last times together. And of course, he had to take me aside and tell me about his prison. And he said, "Bill, you have to get me out of here. I can't go anywhere." They took my car. But anyway, I said, "Well, Tom, you can't. You're there because you need to be there right now, right?" And he said, "Well, maybe so, but I still feel like I'm in prison." So anyway, it was good seeing him.
A very fancy prison, no less.
Very fancy, probably, yeah. So anyway, we'll never forget him. He was a great person. I never had any of the fishing experiences that so many of you have talked about, but I can believe that it was probably Uncle Boots that got involved in that. Because as a child, he tried to do that with me as well. But that bug never caught on with me either. So anyway, great seeing all of you, and thanks so much for pulling this together, Kim and Mark, and for all that you did for cousin Tommy in his really last decade of his life. You all have, as my mother Jen would say, you've earned another star in your crown.
In honor of knowing all four of the Baker boys. Through the good times and the bad times. I could really tell some stories, but I'm not going to do that today. That'll come at another time. But Mark and Kim and Russell and Shelley Ann, y'all have just done an incredible job. All the visits back to Sewanee. That David and I have made all these years. God were truly a blessing for Tommy. The last in November with Jack and David and me, it ended up being a lot of fun for us. A little side note, Jack got introduced to Bucky, so now he's living a fulfilled life now. But anyway, we had a great time visiting with all the Sewanee family and spending a couple of days with Tommy. And Jack, I'm not sure if you were there I think you were at the table when we were sitting in the dining room with Tommy. And the one thing that Tommy just didn't like about me at all, besides that I would boss him around, was that I beat him in tennis. When I'm down here when I was 7 months pregnant with Bryan. And he brought it up at the table with us, didn't he, David? Yeah. And even though he wasn't by no means himself those 2 days we were with him, he looked at me and he said, "You're the one that beat me in tennis." I did a lot of damage to his ego. But when we would come back to Atlanta, the Atlanta area, and then around Sewanee as the years went on, and we always took him out to dinner, and we had to go to a specific restaurant because he liked the server, and he thought that she liked him. And that was typical Tommy, where He was the ladies' man. All the women liked him. And those are the kind of memories and even when Tommy would come down here and spend time with us, when we lived on Starwood Court in our other house, and it was all about the women. And it really was. But he also always asked about Bryan. Bryan, I see you're outside in your car because of Bryan's fishing up in Alaska. And so every single time that we were on the phone with Tommy, which happened quite frequently, he always brought up Bryan and how's the fishing going. So that's about all I have to say. I know it's very hard on you guys back there. It was great hearing all the grandchildren and their love for him.
Yeah, first I want to just join everyone else in thanking Uncle Mark and Kim for all that they've done to take care of Granddad over the years. I think that most families with 6 kids wouldn't be jumping at an opportunity to take care of another person, but that just is a testament to their selflessness and their caring nature. A couple of memories that I have with Granddad were him coming out to Pennsylvania when the Braves were in the playoffs and getting to stay out and watch it with him and my dad. And like Matt and Joel had mentioned, he would always bring some model planes for us either to build or to play with. One memory that sticks out with me is when my dad, and my brother and I all went to go visit Gettysburg. And we were in the motel, and I forgot to bring a toothbrush with me on the trip. So I asked Granddad if he had an extra toothbrush, and he gave me a stick of gum. And he said, "This is how we brush our teeth on a boys' trip." I'll never forget when we'd have family reunions, and he always had a crowd of at least 5 or 6 people around him. They're all smiling and talking to him. He was like a celebrity, and even Bibi would be talking to him, and she'd be smiling, and it just, for me, I was just like, I wish that I could have that level of charisma that he had, and something that I'll never forget, the way that he brought people together and made people happy. So, thank you guys.
Uncle Tommy, spent not a lot of time, but I have very fond memories of Uncle Tommy in all of our trips back up to Atlanta. A lot of, I think, have fond memories of baseball, because every time we go up to Atlanta, we try to get to a Braves game. And I've really been thinking hard about whether I've actually fished with Uncle Tommy, and I don't think I have. Maybe when we were in the Starwood Court, there was a pond nearby that we might have gone to, but it's amazing because when I think of Uncle Tommy, I think of fishing. And whether, I know that we talk a lot about it. And I can very vividly remember all his fishing gear in Atlanta, and I can picture his aluminum bass boat. And I think that a lot of what I do today comes from that. He passed that passion on to me, and I work on boats every day, and I really enjoy fishing. And he always made you feel very, this is a common thread in the conversation, but always very present in the moment, and always made you feel like you were his number one focus when you were right there with him. I always thought very present in the moment. And I do appreciate his passion for fishing, and I think Uncle Tommy and I are very similar in kind of our, I am very, and I think he would probably be the same, but I can go out fishing all day long and not catch a single thing and be very content. And based on the stories I'm hearing, I think he was like that as well. But I can just so vividly remember being in Atlanta, he had probably the steepest driveway in all the world from what I can remember in Atlanta. And I have all my memories of Uncle Tommy are very fond memories, and yeah, just a real special uncle, and spent time with him when I was young in those very formative years, and I have amazing fond memories. Thanks for letting me share.
We're at Jennifer's wedding, and we were going down the glass elevator and looking out, and there was this old man on this scooter, and we were like, who is that? And then we were like, that's our old man, that's Tommy, and that was your scooter in the parking lot of the hotel. Do you remember that?
Oh my God.
That was the morning of the wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
That's great.
Yeah, so
I do remember that. That was very dangerous.
Yes, it was very dangerous. And Tom even got on it. It was even scarier, you know. And we were like in the glass going, don't stop. But you know, what can you do? Right?
But I did some dangerous things, didn't he?
He did. He did. I did want
I wanted to briefly talk about the scooterism, because I was in the parking lot too, and actually I took the first scooter ride, and Tom, who was very competitive, immediately says, give me that thing. And he took off on it, so I just want to make that clear. The other thing is that Boots Cunningham, the elder Boots, so Bootsy's dad, was certainly the fishing master who taught us all. And if you think Tom stayed out late in the lake, you would have to go with Boots to see exactly what it meant to be out late. But with Boots, you had to go, first of all, you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and so you could get to, the fishing grounds as dawn broke. And, it was just, we would eat breakfast, and then we would take off. We had to hook up Boots. Boots had the heaviest 12-foot boat in the world that he had built. And then he put it on he built a trailer out of the rear end of an old 37 Plymouth. And so the combination was extraordinary in the sense that, you knew that when you got to the fishing grounds, you still had another half mile through the woods, pushing a trailer with a boat on. And then you got there, so, just about dawn, you get there, and you go out, and you fish, and you fish, and you fish, and then you fish some more. So, Boots and I are sitting in the middle of the boat, and, by 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, we've already been out there for 6 hours. We're getting really bored, so we started playing with the minnows and just, anyway. Boots didn't come off the lake until he had enough fish on the line, and he always caught fish. But anyway, he was our fishing hero, and Tom learned well.
Well, Jack, you know, you all were obviously much better fishermen than me, because whenever I was out in that boat with Boots, we spent all of our time close to shore trying to untangle my bait out of the trees. We were always, you know, I mean, he used to say I was fishing for squirrels.
You probably were.
Either squirrels, Bill, or a Russian tank.
Or an alligator. Little tiny alligator.
The Russian tank was when you got caught on the snag at the bottom and couldn't get it off. And there seemed to be a lot of Russian tanks around.
I wanted to share just something really quickly, just another memory. It's really about Crissy and Matt and Tom. You know, I got to know them as the little ones and everything, and I just remember spending time in that driveway that there was no way that I would ever drive down myself, because I would have driven right through. And I remember, you know, Tom would say, yeah, you have to watch the weather, because I'm from Florida, so, okay. Watch the weather, because if it's going to go down even a little bit, then you have to park on the street, because you're not going to get your car out in the morning. And I don't know if somebody actually drove through it one time or something. I don't know if Trudy went through it one time or something, but I would have never parked. But I just remember, like, you know, being in the home with Tom and Trudy, and with Crissy and Matt, and especially, I don't know how old you were, but you can look at pictures, and, you know, Crissy looks, and like she still does, like a model. And I would just be like, darn, girl, you were gorgeous, you know. And Matt was just this cute little guy that would always kind of crawl up on my lap, and, you know, and just, he would show me games, and we would play little things, and he just, you know, so it was such a neat thing just to be able to. But what I really wanted you two to know was how proud of y'all he was. When I look at one of the pictures that comes into my mind is, there's so many different things that he was proud of you two with. But two visions that always come into my mind was you two dancing at your wedding. Was such a beautiful moment. And I remember him, like, even talking, like, worrying about that, and is he going to be able to do it? Is he going to be able to, you know, and everything, so worried. And he did a great job, you know. And then just different pictures, you know, with you, like in this, you know, when you were graduating the service. And I mean, he was always asking. He was always just loved you guys so much. And he would always ask, it's kind of like, you know, asking about when he sees brothers. He was always asking when he was going to be able to see, because, you know, it was just harder, you know, and we were just always around. So, you know, whether he liked it or not, you know, so, but he just loved you guys so much. And I just want to make sure that you guys know that, because I know that, you know, Mark and I we did a lot, and that it's only because we were right there and had the ability to do that. But I just want you guys to know that he loved you guys with all of his heart, with all of his being. And I just, you know, I just need you guys to know that, because he talks about you all the time. There wasn't time. So I just want you to know. He talked to a bunch of people, yeah, so it's just not us, so yes. But he just was so proud of y'all, so I just wanted y'all to know that.
I just want to share two events that I feel I was pretty. I think that's the word in English. I'm forgetting my English. My mind is not working, by the way. So I was privy to two events where Tommy is part of that story. The first one was in West Palm Beach after Jennifer and David's wedding. Tom, Trudy, Crissy, and Matt, and our family, so that would be Tim,
Ben and Caroline and myself, was Caroline? Yeah, Caroline was born by then. We vacationed together. We decided when we were there that because Tom had this attitude about life of just, let's say, life, you know. And so he said, yeah. So we got together, and after the wedding, we went to eat to restaurants. You know, all the meals were eaten in restaurants, and we went to the beach, and we went swimming. So we vacationed with Tommy and his family and my family. That was very, very nice. The part that was nice for me was because I was always planning, and that time it was such spur of the moment that we all just went along with what. Let's do this. Where do we want to eat? It was wonderful. So the wedding was Jennifer's wedding. Oh my God, that was so wonderful. And then vacationing with Tom and his family afterwards was the icing in the cake. The other one was after a big family event, a Harvard family event that was organized by Mark and Kim here in Atlanta. I don't remember exactly what. Jack and Judy had reserved a cabin in one of the parks close by. And so the cabin, the purpose of that was to get the four brothers together. And so it was Rip, Tom, it was Jack and Judy, and you guys.
I was there.
David and Carolyn. So it's them. For whatever reason, I don't know why, for whatever reason, Tim and I were invited. We were not part of that group, but we were very fortunate and pretty. And so we shared a room with David and Caroline. Tim and I, there were two big beds, I guess, so they were kind enough to say, yeah, sure, we can sleep in the same room. The story is that the two older brothers, before we left the city and going into the cabin, they had planned that they wanted to cook a steak because, you know, they love eating steak. But they didn't want to eat with the rest of the siblings of the group. They had bought steak just for the two of them. And so they left the cabin to do their cooking. They built the fire. And so all of us, like TV, like a comic TV series, we were all watching outside. The two of them, because it was downhill, they were trying to build the fire. Just to build the fire. I think it took a long time, and that was our entertainment, to watch them build the fire, trying to organize and cook their meat. At the end, I don't remember if they cooked the meat or not, but I'm just so grateful to that experience. It was very pretty, very special, and I'm going to add one more thing. Adding to ends, you know, I have never said to anybody, oh my God, you're good looking. Yeah, you think you're good looking. But when I was at hospice, and it was just Tom and myself, I would go there, and I looked at him and I said, my God, he is in hospice, and he looks so good. I mean, that's the way to live this world. Because to me, sincerely, he really looked good. So I said, and knowing that for him, his looks were important, I just say, because I felt that he could hear and he could absorb what was going on. I would watch his expression, and when you talk with somebody and you get their attention, their breathing changes because they're listening. So that's how I knew he was listening, and he was aware when somebody was in the room talking to him, if there was not a lot of commotion. So I said, you know, Tommy, you look good. Your beard, your hair, you just look really good. And I know he was listening to that. So that's what I had to share about some experiences I had with the Baker brothers. Thank you.
Yes, she had something to say, yes.
Okay.
Aww.
Oh,
That's
wow.
Kate. Isn't that Kate?
Hey, yeah.
Yeah.
Tommy and Kate.
Tommy and
Yeah.
Kate.
Wow.
Yep. There's the three sisters.
Hey, can you send us those pictures somehow? I'd love to have those pictures.
And who's that handsome fellow? All that hair.
Scan it or something.
Hey,
Those are great pictures.
Viva, have your dad scan those pictures to us.
I think you guys might. Was that a bucket of pictures there?
Yes, we have so many pictures. And
These
Shelley
are-
Ann has been sorting them out to all the families.
David,
Okay. I'll send them, Dave. I'll
We need to digitize all of them.
Thank you.
Hey, and I was gonna mention we did get a lot of pictures from different family members, and with my daughter Jessica's help, we did put a video together. Not a ton of pictures, but I will send that video out. It got a musical background, and I think you'll enjoy the.
And also, the ancestry thing. We might want to. I don't know who wants to work on that.
Where's Cousin Eddie when we need him?
Yeah, exactly.
We need to bug Eddie.
He was the one at the very first. Well, it was one of the only reunion that he attended. Not the 2007, but the one before that. He brought a lot of that with him to that reunion. It was in the Summerwind house. I do remember
It's
that.
like this. It's like this thing right now.
Yeah.
Of a lot of it.
Yeah. So yeah, we definitely need to tap into that and get that information out to as many people that were interested. So.
And there's some different stuff in there too. So.
Yeah.
And stuff that.
So you want to talk about what you got there?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Go for
See, this is what I get. I get all this craziness in the back. All this, whatever you call it, background noise. Well, I don't know, you guys. Crissy, do you remember the breakfast rolls?
Yeah.
The really bad ones?
The cinnamon rolls?
The cinnamon rolls, the breakfast rolls, yeah.
The one with the strawberry?
Pecans.
Anybody? Matthew?
Yeah.
He always had those darn things. Then he made sausages. Remember those sausages? And didn't he have a Christmas tree too, like a really funny one?
It was small with a giant red ball on it.
Super Bowl.
Did he hide it in his laundry room? Where did he have that thing?
I don't know.
He did it in Atlanta when he was living in an apartment. That was what we were.
Yeah, you guys were just on the block, weren't you, Crissy?
From which apartment?
The one when Tom was close to you guys?
When he was in Conyers?
Yeah.
When he was in Conyers, we were about 45 minutes, an hour away.
Maybe it was in Duluth. Maybe.
Oh, maybe, yeah. He may have put the tree up in, yeah.
Just love that thing.
He really did.
And he also had a fascination with mattresses.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, we saved it. You better let him know that you slept up.
We tried to sleep on him. Anybody else have memories of those mattresses and that couch? Crissy?
I don't know.
The box springs?
Oh, yeah, he did have some pretty worn out mattresses.
He never got rid of those.
He's like, I don't need a new one.
What about his pillows?
Oh, the pillows. They had some angles. I don't think he washed them. I don't know. And I noticed you have the thin leather jacket it in the background.
Yeah.
Oh,
You guys see all that?
Does anybody want to count how many times that's been redone?
Well, I know that Kim had to put it together a few times, tried to stitch it as best she could with her sewing machine. So it's got quite a few tears in it, but it's seen a lot
And
of
the
battle.
hat? What about the hat?
I don't know where it has to do the hat. He had a few hats. He had a few different hats.
All I know is that outfit was the one outfit he wore every single day for like 30 years.
The famed leather jacket with the hat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wasn't he a party guy?
You would find him at a party or two, yeah.
Invited or not?
We probably couldn't get him to leave.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I found this great picture of you, Crissy, dancing with your dad at your wedding.
Oh, yeah. That's the one Kim was talking about? Yeah, I like that picture.
That's such a nice one.
It is picture.
Let's see.
I can say something. I had a thought. Let me bring it back up. Well, we visited Tom and Trudy when Crissy, I don't think Matthew was born, but I remember about Tom, he had this basement room, the men's den or whatever he called it, with a big couch and a big chair, and Crissy would show up in her and look gorgeous, little ballerina, and I just remember how beautiful she was and how much he loved her being there and was so proud of her. It was really a nice trip, and I don't remember that the driveway was so steep, but I imagine it was. And we got a chance to see the boat. I think I went along out on the boat, although we didn't do much fishing. But that's one really nice memory with Tom. And of course, Tom called a lot over the last years, and that's always been pleasant, and he always made an effort to speak to everyone and let us know he loved us all. He was always so loving, like everyone else has said, and inclusive. And the particular connection I had, and we were all there at the 2007 reunion with my sister, who was from Nebraska as well. Bev worked at Sears for years, and Tommy worked at Sears, and they met each other at that reunion because her and her husband drove up from where they were working around in Florida or somewhere. And my sister never forgot Tommy. He moved in her mind. She sends her condolences and care for us, and really liked Tom, and they had a good time at their reunion. The Sears workers in those days, I believe.
Just a minute, Mom.
And I wasn't quite.
Okay.
That's enough. You're right. The Baker brothers are a great family. We are so lucky to be part of this family. I miss being closer to the South and not getting to see you in person, and I'm so glad that we had this time together today. Thanks so much, Kim and Mark. You've been such stalwarts and so kind, and I'm glad that your children were able to express how much they enjoyed having Tommy in their life. Little exchange for all that you gave was a lot of love. So we love you all and love seeing you. Bye.